thanks so much for giving me your time to do this interview. I know how busy you are at the moment. I really appreciate you giving us your time.
Pleasure.
I'm interviewing Cath Davis for one of the vlog series for the Family Violence Leadership newsletter that Fizzy has been doing. And I'm really pleased to introduce Cath to you. Cath is currently the Senior Government Advisor to the Vice-Chancellor, Martin Bean, at RMIT, and has been in that post since the beginning of last year, yes?
About March, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think you started just before me. Prior to that, you were a Senior Advisor to Martin Foley, with a very strong and passionate engagement in the particularly focused around disability services. And before that, you've held a whole range of roles within the union movement with a particular focus on women's experience of employment. One of the things that Cath and I have in common and we've shared is that we both learnt a lot of our trade as women's officers in student politics. And Cath was the women's officer for the National Union of Students while she was at university. At RMIT, yes?
Yes, alumni.
Yeah, so which is another thing that we have in common. The other thing when I asked Cath about her bio that I know about Cath is that you are a very proud and enthusiastic pank. I had to ask you what pank was, but professional auntie, no kids.
That's right. They're my boys.
It's very nice and very nice to hear you talk about them. Cath, there's a very strong theme throughout your career in terms of working to support women. And what I'm really keen to ask you about and hear your thoughts on are what feminist leadership means to you.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Micaela, and a pleasure to be part of the series. To me, feminist leadership is certainly about doing things differently. I'm a really firm believer on building consensus, because I think that when you're trying to force and create change, bringing everyone together in comfort and understanding and a joint and a shared understanding of where we need to get to, and a common goal is really important. It's really important to me because I think that's a better way of going about things than having the debates, slam down arguments, and whoever has the loudest voices or the most numbers wins, which to me is a very masculine way of doing things. And I think that we are trying to engage in a different system of community as women in the way that we'd like to reframe our society and positions of power and our engagement with the world. So consensus is really important to me. The other that flows from that is obviously mentoring, because I think that it's really important that things are better than for others than they were for you, bringing people along, bringing women up as you go on that journey. So being quite frank with people about and young women or women who have different experiences about what that journey has actually looked like for you, because sometimes it isn't pretty. Sometimes you do still have to have those slammed down arguments, but how do you then negotiate your way through those power structures in your attempts to create change?
So that's a really good segue into what my next question is for you. I think what you've talked about managing and thinking through the processes and the way things are done is really important. Cath, you've also you're currently working alongside the leadership with RMIT, going through some incredibly challenging times with the impact of the pandemic on the university sector. You were really closely working with Martin Foley and government during all of the impact of the introduction of the National Disability Insurance Scheme and all of the change that came with that. So what I'm curious about is what you've learnt and what your advice and thoughts are about managing through change.
Yeah, I didn't know that I'd be living through so many tumultuous periods, but I think the thing that I certainly learnt in government and working with a very strong team was about having your expectations very clear, setting them based on your principles and your values, so that when there's pressure and pushback on those expectations from people who are resistant to change or have another agenda, that you're very clear about what that line is. An example of that when we were working through the NDIS was we were given the advice by Rhonda Galbally, a very prominent disability activist and women's activist, to question at every point, is this decision going to make the lives of people with disabilities better? Is this going to enable the choice and control that was promised by the NDIS? Because she says if all we were ever going to do was double the amount of money in the scheme, but not change the way people had services offered to them, the way it was personalised, the breadth that would give them that choice, the sort of innovation and the human rights central to the provision of services, if that didn't change, we weren't holding up our end of the bargain. So that was a central theme for the core team of ministers and advisors we were working with. And that meant that sometimes we'd have to push back on department advice or on other governments when we felt that decisions were falling short of that principle. So it meant things like going back to the NDIA to say that the planning process is not working for people, and that we would supplement in Victoria to really try and push for different ways of doing that planning. It meant that we decided that we would have our own registration scheme for the workforce, and it meant that we had our own workforce strategy that we spent significant money on, because we weren't comfortable that the Commonwealth was at the standard that we would want them to be. And I think that also meant that, you know, Treasury and governments have a finite budget, and money does matter. But when you had that really high, clear expectation, you were able to then argue back, and sometimes you actually won the day on that. But you were only able to do that if you were authentic as well. And my bosses over that journey, Martin Foley then and Martin Bean now, the two Martins, are definitely authentic people. You know that they're genuine in their care for other human beings. And so when you hold up that fundamental principle to those that might want you to weaken your stance, it holds true, and it can actually win that argument, because they know it's not just a flippant line in a debate. So I think being very clear about principles is a key to change.
Mm. And Cath, if I can say, I think that your passionate conviction to your principles is a hallmark of your leadership and the way you engage with people. This vlog series really is down to you, and a conversation that you and I had when we went together up to Mildura to speak to one of the family violence leadership cohorts. And you were so passionate about rolling up your sleeves and how can I help, regardless what is it that I can do to help this sector and these bunch of leaders with a series of what we thought were going to be face-to-face forums that's moved online. So thank you very much, Cath, for the passion that you bring to your work and the support that you've shown Fizzy in producing these leadership series.
My pleasure. As always, if I know you make a difference, that's where I'd like to be working alongside you. So pleasure.
Thanks, Cath.